The morning mist hung low over Buckingham Palace as Captain James Morrison adjusted his red tunic and checked his pocket watch. 23 years of faithful service to the crown had taught him that routine was everything. Yet today felt different. The weight of responsibility pressed heavier on his shoulders as he prepared for what should have been a standard security sweep of the royal quarters. Queen Camilla had departed for Scotland the previous evening, leaving her private chambers empty for the mandatory monthly security inspection. Morrison had overseen hundreds of such procedures, but never in the Queen Consort's personal spaces. The protocol was clear and unchanging. Every room, every closet, every possible hiding place had to be examined for security threats, listening devices, or any items that shouldn't be there. As he walked through the ornate corridors lined with portraits of monarchs past, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking through history itself. The palace walls seemed to whisper stories of centuries of royal drama, secrets, and traditions that had shaped the very foundation of the British monarchy. His polished boots echoed against the marble floors as he approached the Queen Consort's wing, each step taking him deeper into a world that few civilians would ever witness. The security team assembled outside the royal chambers consisted of Morrison and 3 trusted officers: Sergeant Williams, a meticulous woman with 15 years of palace experience; Officer Davies, young but sharp-eyed and thorough; and Officer Thompson, whose expertise in detecting electronic surveillance equipment was unmatched. They had worked together on countless inspections, moving with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Morrison inserted the master key into the lock of Queen Camilla's private sitting room. The heavy wooden door opened to reveal a space that was both elegant and surprisingly intimate. Soft morning light filtered through tall windows draped in cream silk, illuminating a room filled with personal touches that humanized the royal occupant. Family photographs sat alongside priceless antiques, and fresh flowers from the palace gardens filled crystal vases on mahogany side tables. The team began their systematic search, each officer taking a designated section of the quarters. Morrison himself focused on the main bedroom, a spacious chamber dominated by a 4-poster bed with intricate carvings that told stories of British craftsmanship spanning generations. The room smelled faintly of lavender and the expensive perfume that Queen Camilla favored, creating an atmosphere of refined femininity that seemed almost sacred in its privacy. As they worked, Morrison found himself reflecting on the strange nature of his job. He was tasked with protecting people he rarely spoke to directly, safeguarding lives that existed in a realm so different from his own working-class background that they might as well have been from another planet. Yet he had dedicated his entire adult life to this service, finding honor and purpose in being a guardian of something larger than himself. The inspection proceeded smoothly until they reached the dressing area, a large space adjacent to the bedroom that housed Queen Camilla's extensive wardrobe. Floor-to-ceiling built-in wardrobes lined 3 walls, each section meticulously organized by type, season, and occasion. The room contained everything from casual country clothing to formal state dinner gowns, each piece representing not just fashion, but the complex requirements of royal duty. Officer Davies began systematically checking each wardrobe section, running her hands along the walls behind the hanging clothes, and using a small mirror to examine the upper reaches where surveillance devices might be hidden. Sergeant Williams focused on the shoe collection and accessory drawers, while Officer Thompson swept for electronic signals. Morrison coordinated their efforts while conducting his own visual inspection of the room's architectural features. It was in the 3rd wardrobe section, behind a collection of formal evening gowns, that Davies made the discovery that would change everything. Her searching hand encountered something unexpected at the very back of the deep closet space, a section of the wooden panel that felt different from the rest. Upon closer examination, she realized it was actually a hidden compartment, cleverly disguised to blend seamlessly with the surrounding woodwork. "Captain," Davies called softly, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty. "I think you should see this." Morrison approached, his experienced eye immediately recognizing the craftsmanship of the concealment. Palace renovations over the centuries had created numerous hidden spaces, some intentional and others simply the result of changing architectural needs. But this particular hiding place seemed deliberately constructed and recently accessed based on the absence of dust around its edges. Working together, Morrison and Davies carefully opened the hidden panel, revealing a space large enough to hold several garments. What they found inside took their breath away and sent a chill down Morrison's spine that had nothing to do with the cool morning air circulating through the palace. Hanging in the secret compartment, protected by a white cotton garment bag, was a gown of such extraordinary beauty and obvious historical significance that Morrison immediately knew they had stumbled upon something far beyond the scope of a routine security inspection. The dress was clearly vintage, its construction and materials speaking to an era of royal craftsmanship that few contemporary pieces could match. But it was the distinctive design elements that made Morrison's heart race with recognition. The intricate beadwork, the particular shade of ivory silk, the style of the bodice, and the length of the train. All of these features matched descriptions he had read in palace historical documents and seen in archive photographs. This wasn't just any royal gown. This was a piece of coronation regalia, the kind of garment that belonged in the Tower of London or the royal collection, not hidden in a private closet. Davy stepped back, her face pale as the implications of their discovery began to sink in. "Captain, is that what I think it is?" Morrison carefully examined the gown without touching it, his trained eye taking in every detail. The quality of the materials, the precision of the construction, the way the fabric had aged, everything confirmed his growing suspicion. But it was the small label sewn discreetly inside the neckline that provided the final, shocking confirmation. In elegant script, the label read, "Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Coronation Gown, June 2nd, 1953. The silence in the dressing room was deafening as all four officers stared at the impossible sight before them. Morrison's mind raced through the implications of what they had found. Queen Elizabeth II coronation gown was supposed to be part of the permanent royal collection, displayed occasionally at special exhibitions but otherwise safely preserved in climate-controlled conditions. How had it ended up hidden in Queen Camilla's private closet? Sergeant Williams was the first to break the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "That can't be the real thing, can it? I mean, surely it's a replica, or—" But Morrison's expression told them all they needed to know. His decades of experience working within the royal household had taught him to recognize authentic royal regalia, and every instinct told him they were looking at the genuine article. The coronation gown of the late Queen Elizabeth II, arguably one of the most significant pieces of clothing in British history, was hanging in a secret compartment in the current Queen Consort's dressing room. The discovery raised immediate and troubling questions. How had the gown come to be there? Had Queen Camilla placed it there herself, or had someone else hidden it in her quarters? If she was responsible, what were her intentions? And perhaps most importantly, did King Charles know about its presence? Morrison's training kicked in as he processed the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just a security matter anymore. It was a potential scandal that could rock the very foundations of the monarchy. The media attention alone would be catastrophic, but the implications for the royal family's internal relationships could be even more damaging. "Nobody touches anything," Morrison ordered, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. "Davies, Thompson, I want you both to step outside and guard the entrance to these quarters. Nobody comes in except on my direct order. Williams, I need you to help me document everything exactly as we found it." As his team moved to follow his instructions, Morrison pulled out his secure communication device to contact his superior. This was far beyond his authority to handle alone. The discovery of Queen Elizabeth II coronation gown in Queen Camilla's possession would require the highest levels of palace management, and possibly the king himself, to resolve. But even as he prepared to make the call that would set off a chain reaction throughout the royal household, Morrison couldn't stop staring at the beautiful gown hanging before him. In the soft morning light filtering through the dressing room windows, the silk seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, as if the spirit of the late queen still inhabited the fabric that had adorned her on one of the most important days in British history. The weight of royal history, family loyalty, duty, and scandal all converged in that hidden compartment, creating a moment that Morrison knew would be seared into his memory forever. As he raised his communication device to make the call that would change everything, he wondered if he was about to become the catalyst for a royal crisis that would echo through the pages of history books for generations to come. The morning that had begun as routine had become anything but ordinary, and Morrison realized that nothing at Buckingham Palace would ever be quite the same again. The secure phone call Captain Morrison made to Palace Security Director Sir Robert Ashworth lasted exactly 93 seconds. But those brief moments set in motion events that would test the very fabric of royal protocol and family loyalty. Within 20 minutes, the Queen Consort's private quarters had transformed from a peaceful morning inspection site into the epicenter of the most delicate investigation the palace had seen in decades. Sir Robert arrived with a small team of his most trusted personnel, including Dr. Margaret Thornfield, the Royal Collection's chief curator and authentication expert. The 60-year-old academic had devoted her life to preserving royal artifacts and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of every significant piece in the crown's possession. Her face was grave as she entered the dressing room, already briefed on the nature of the discovery that had prompted this emergency response. Morrison watched Dr. Thornfield's expression changed from professional skepticism to stunned recognition as she examined the gown hanging in the secret compartment. Her hands, protected by white cotton gloves, trembled slightly as she verified the authenticity markers that confirmed their worst fears. This was indeed Queen Elizabeth II's original coronation gown, worth not only millions of pounds, but representing immeasurable historical and sentimental value to the British people. The stitching patterns, the specific silk weave, the hand-beaded details, everything matches our archive documentation perfectly, Dr. Thornfield reported to Sir Robert, her voice tight with controlled emotion. But that's impossible because this gown should be in the Royal Collection's secure storage facility at St. James's Palace, where it's been kept under climate-controlled conditions since 2018. Sir Robert's weathered face showed the strain of processing this information. A veteran of 40 years in royal service, he had navigated everything from security threats to media scandals. But nothing had prepared him for the possibility that one of the crown's most precious artifacts might have been secretly relocated without proper authorization or documentation. The next phone call Sir Robert made was to the Royal Collection Trust storage facility, requesting an immediate inventory check of the coronation gown status. The response came within an hour and confirmed their growing fears. The official records showed the gown safely stored in its designated climate control vault, but a physical inspection revealed that what they had been protecting was actually an extremely sophisticated replica. The implications were staggering. Someone had managed to replace Queen Elizabeth II's actual coronation gown with a fake so convincing that it had fooled the Royal Collection's own security procedures for an unknown period of time. The level of expertise and access required for such a substitution pointed to either an elaborate external conspiracy or, more troublingly, an inside job involving someone with intimate knowledge of royal protocols and security procedures. Dr. Thornfield established a makeshift examination area in Queen Camilla's sitting room, carefully transporting the gown from its hiding place for detailed analysis. Under her expert scrutiny, every thread told a story of royal history and craftsmanship that spoke to the gown's authenticity. The fabric showed the expected signs of aging for a 70-year-old silk garment, while the construction techniques matched exactly the documented methods used by the team of seamstresses who had created it for the 1953 coronation. "Look at these hand-sewn pearls," Dr. Thornfield pointed out to Sir Robert as she examined the gown's intricate beadwork under a magnifying glass. Each one was individually selected and attached according to the original design specifications. This level of detail would be virtually impossible to replicate without access to the original construction notes and techniques. As the authentication process continued, Sir Robert coordinated a parallel investigation into how the switch could have occurred. The Royal Collection security logs were analyzed for any irregularities, staff access records were reviewed, and transportation manifests were scrutinized for clues about when and how the original gown might have been removed from its official storage location. The initial findings were deeply troubling. Security footage from the St. James's Palace storage facility showed no signs of unauthorized access or suspicious activity. All staff members who had handled the gown in recent years were accounted for and had followed proper protocols. The documentation chain appeared intact and legitimate, suggesting that whoever had orchestrated the switch possessed not only physical access to the artifacts, but also the knowledge and authority to manipulate the official records. Captain Morrison found himself at the center of an expanding web of investigation that went far beyond his original security inspection mandate. His team's discovery had unveiled what appeared to be a carefully planned and executed operation involving one of the monarchy's most treasured possessions. The fact that the real gown had been hidden in Queen Camilla's private quarters raised questions that no one wanted to voice directly, but everyone was thinking. The afternoon brought a development that changed everything. King Charles III was returning to Buckingham Palace immediately, cutting short his official engagements in Wales upon receiving Sir Robert's urgent briefing about the situation. The king's early return sent ripples of concern throughout the palace staff, as such dramatic changes to royal schedules typically occurred only during genuine crises. While they waited for His Majesty's arrival, Dr. Thornfield continued her examination of the coronation gown, documenting every detail that might provide clues about how and when it had been moved from its official location. Hidden within the gown's inner construction, she discovered something that made the investigation even more complex: a small envelope containing what appeared to be a handwritten note. The envelope was aged and yellowed, suggesting it had been placed there many years earlier. Dr. Thornfield's hands shook as she carefully extracted the delicate paper, revealing a message written in the unmistakable handwriting of Queen Elizabeth II herself. The note was brief but emotionally charged, expressing the late Queen's wishes for the gown's future and her concerns about its ultimate fate after her death. "My dearest Camilla," the note began, "I entrust to you this most precious symbol of my dedication to our people and our crown. May it serve as a bridge between what was and what will be, and may you find in its legacy the strength to carry forward the duties that bind us all to something greater than ourselves." The discovery of the Queen's personal note transformed the entire investigation from a potential theft case into something far more complex and emotionally fraught. The late Queen's own words suggested that the gown's presence in Camilla's quarters might not be unauthorized at all, but rather the fulfillment of a private arrangement between the two women that had never been officially documented or communicated to the royal collection. Sir Robert found himself facing an unprecedented situation that challenged every protocol and procedure he had relied upon throughout his career. If Queen Elizabeth II had personally given the coronation gown to Queen Camilla, then technically no crime had been committed, despite the irregular nature of the transfer and the deception involved in replacing it with a replica. However, the lack of official documentation and the secret nature of the arrangement raised serious questions about transparency and the proper management of Crown assets. The investigation team expanded their inquiry to include a review of Queen Elizabeth II's personal papers and private correspondence from her final years. Working with the late Queen's personal secretary and the Royal Archives, they searched for any additional documentation that might shed light on her intentions regarding the coronation gown and her relationship with her daughter-in-law. What emerged from this deeper investigation was a picture of a complex and evolving friendship between the two women that had developed over the years despite their very different backgrounds and the challenging circumstances of their initial meeting. Private letters and diary entries suggested that Queen Elizabeth II had come to view Camilla not just as her son's wife, but as someone who truly understood the burdens and sacrifices required by royal duty. Captain Morrison, meanwhile, struggled with his own role in events that had spiraled far beyond anything his security training had prepared him for. The straightforward protocols that had governed his career for over 2 decades seemed inadequate for navigating a situation where family loyalty, royal tradition, legal obligations, and emotional bonds all intersected in ways that defied easy resolution. As evening approached and the palace prepared for King Charles's arrival, the weight of unresolved questions hung heavy in the air. The discovery of Queen Elizabeth II's note had transformed Queen Camilla from a potential suspect in an art theft into someone who might have been following the explicit wishes of her beloved mother-in-law. Yet the secret nature of the arrangement and the elaborate deception required to maintain it suggested complexities that went deeper than simple gift-giving between family members. The coronation gown itself remained in Dr. Thornfield's careful custody, a silent witness to decades of royal history and personal relationships that had shaped the monarchy in ways the public might never fully understand. Its beautiful silk and intricate beadwork seemed to hold within them not just the memory of one historic day in 1953, but the hopes, fears, and dreams of 2 remarkable women who had each, in their own way, dedicated their lives to serving the crown and the British people. As the palace prepared for what promised to be a difficult and emotional conversation between father and son, husband and wife king and queen consort, The investigation that had begun with a routine security inspection had revealed truths about love, loyalty, and family that would test the very foundations upon which the modern monarchy was built. The sound of helicopter rotors cutting through the evening air announced King Charles III's arrival at Buckingham Palace 3 hours earlier than originally scheduled. Captain Morrison watched from a palace window as the royal aircraft settled onto the grounds, its powerful engines gradually winding down to silence. Even from a distance, he could see the tension in His Majesty's posture as he emerged from the helicopter, his normally composed demeanor replaced by something that spoke of deep personal turmoil. Sir Robert Ashworth waited in the king's private study. The coronation gown, now carefully transported to a secure location where it could be properly preserved while the investigation continued. The handwritten note from Queen Elizabeth II lay on the king's desk. Protected within a clear archival sleeve, its words destined to complicate an already impossible situation. King Charles entered his study with the measured stride of a man who had spent 7 decades preparing for moments of crisis. Yet Morrison could see from his position in the hallway that this particular crisis had shaken the monarch more deeply than most. The discovery that his mother's coronation gown had been secretly given to his wife, hidden in their private quarters, and replaced with a replica in the royal collection challenged not only official protocols, but the very nature of trust within the royal family. "Show me everything," the king commanded without preamble, his voice carrying the weight of both sovereign authority and personal pain. Sir Robert began his briefing with the clinical precision that royal service demanded, walking His Majesty through the timeline of discovery, the authentication process, and the investigation's findings. But when he presented Queen Elizabeth II's handwritten note, the king's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Morrison watched from the doorway as Charles read his mother's words, his hands trembling slightly as he absorbed her message about bridges between past and future. The king's first phone call was to Queen Camilla in Scotland, a conversation that lasted nearly an hour and could be heard as a low murmur through the thick oak doors of his study. Palace staff moved carefully through the corridors, sensing the gravity of events unfolding, but not understanding their full scope. Morrison coordinated additional security measures while trying to process his own role in unleashing this family crisis. When Queen Camilla arrived at Buckingham Palace the following morning, her usual confident bearing was replaced by something more vulnerable and uncertain. Morrison had served as her personal protection officer on numerous occasions and had never seen her look so emotionally exposed. The woman who had faced decades of public scrutiny and media criticism with remarkable resilience now seemed genuinely frightened about the consequences of her actions. The private meeting between the king and queen took place in the Blue Drawing Room, a formal space that seemed to emphasize the official nature of their discussion, while its intimate scale allowed for the personal conversation that the situation demanded. Morrison remained stationed outside, coordinating security while trying not to listen to the heated voices that occasionally rose beyond the room's soundproofing. Dr. Thornfield had spent the night conducting additional research into the coronation gown's history and significance, preparing a detailed report that would help the royal couple understand the full implications of what had transpired. Her findings revealed that Queen Elizabeth II had apparently been planning this transfer for several years, based on subtle references in her private correspondence that suggested deep thought about how her most personal possessions should be distributed after her death. The late Queen's reasoning, as reconstructed from her papers and personal notes, painted a picture of a woman who understood that her coronation gown represented more than just a beautiful piece of clothing. To her, it symbolized the moment when she had committed her life to service, accepting the burden of constitutional monarchy with all its sacrifices and responsibilities. By passing it to Camilla, she was apparently attempting to create a tangible connection between her own experience and that of the woman who would become her successor. But the method chosen for this transfer revealed the complex emotional terrain that Queen Elizabeth II had been navigating in her final years. Rather than making the gift public or even officially documented, she had chosen secrecy, suggesting that she understood the potential for controversy while still feeling compelled to follow her personal convictions about what was right for the future of the monarchy. Captain Morrison found himself summoned to the Blue Drawing Room as the royal couple sought to understand exactly how the discovery had been made and what security implications it might have. Facing both king and queen in their obvious distress, he recounted the morning's events with careful precision, emphasizing his team's professionalism while acknowledging the extraordinary nature of what they had found. "Captain Morrison," Queen Camilla said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I want you to understand that I never intended for this to become a scandal or to cause problems for anyone. The Queen, your mother," she added, turning to Charles, "gave me this gift in private because she wanted it to mean something personal, not because she was trying to circumvent proper procedures." The Queen Consort's explanation revealed a story that was both touching and troubling in its implications. According to her account, Queen Elizabeth II had summoned her for a private meeting just months before her death, during which she had presented the coronation gown as a personal gift meant to symbolize her acceptance of Camilla and her confidence in the younger woman's ability to fulfill royal duties. The late queen had apparently been concerned that making such a gift public would overshadow other bequests and create unnecessary controversy about favoritism within the royal family. She had arranged for the replica to be created by skilled craftspeople who had worked on royal garments for decades, ensuring that the substitution would preserve the gown for posterity while allowing the real artifact to serve a more personal purpose. King Charles listened to his wife's explanation with a mixture of pain and understanding that reflected the impossible position in which his mother's decision had placed them all. As a son, he could appreciate his mother's desire to create meaningful connections between the women who would carry forward the monarchy's traditions. As a king, he understood the serious protocol violations and potential public relations disasters that such private arrangements could create. "She made me promise not to tell anyone, not even you," Queen Camilla continued, her eyes filling with tears as she looked at her husband. "She said that some gifts were meant to be private, between women who understood what it meant to sacrifice their private lives for public service. I kept the gown in the hidden compartment because I didn't know what else to do with it. I couldn't display it without explaining how I come to possess it, but I couldn't bear to hide it away completely." Dr. Thornfield's additional research had uncovered evidence that supported Queen Camilla's account of events. Hidden within the royal archives were preliminary sketches and fabric samples that suggested the creation of a replica had indeed been authorized by Queen Elizabeth II herself, though the official documentation had been kept deliberately minimal to maintain the privacy she apparently desired. The investigation also revealed that several other personal items from Queen Elizabeth II's private collection had been distributed to family members through similar informal channels, suggesting that the coronation gown transfer was part of a larger pattern of personal gift-giving that the late queen had kept separate from official inheritance procedures. Morrison watched as the royal couple struggled to find a path forward that would honor Queen Elizabeth II's wishes while addressing the legitimate concerns raised by the irregular nature of the transfer. The legal implications alone were staggering, as the coronation gown's status as a crown asset meant that its private transfer might require parliamentary notification or even approval. The emotional weight of the situation was perhaps even more challenging than the legal complexities. Queen Camilla's genuine distress at having unintentionally created a scandal was evident to everyone present, while King Charles wrestled with conflicting loyalties to his mother's memory, his wife's feelings, and his constitutional obligations as monarch. As afternoon gave way to evening, palace officials worked frantically to develop strategies for managing the situation if it became public knowledge. The discovery of the coronation gown in Queen Camilla's quarters had the potential to generate precisely the kind of scandal that could damage public confidence in the monarchy, particularly given the complex history of public opinion regarding the Queen Consort's role within the royal family. Yet Morrison found himself increasingly convinced that what they were witnessing was not a calculated deception or theft, but rather the unintended consequences of a deeply personal gesture between two women who had found common ground in their shared understanding of royal duty. Queen Elizabeth II's decision to secretly give away her coronation gown spoke to her recognition that symbols of monarchy meant more when they connected human hearts than when they sat in storage vaults. The day ended with no clear resolution to the crisis, but with a growing appreciation among all involved for the complex emotions and relationships that existed beneath the formal structures of royal protocol. The coronation gown itself remained in Dr. Thornfield's custody, a beautiful and troubling reminder that even the most carefully maintained institutions could be shaped by simple human gestures of love, trust, and hope for the future. As Morrison prepared his final security report on the day's extraordinary events, he realized that his routine inspection had uncovered something far more significant than any security threat. It had revealed the human heart of an institution that the public often viewed as cold and calculating, showing that behind the pageantry and protocol were real people making difficult choices about love, loyalty, and legacy in a world where their every action carried consequences far beyond their personal desires. 3 days after Captain Morrison's discovery had turned Buckingham Palace upside down, a phone call from Princess and changed everything once again. Her Majesty's only daughter requested an urgent private meeting with King Charles, claiming she possessed information crucial to understanding Queen Elizabeth II's final intentions regarding the coronation gown and other personal bequests. Morrison watched from his security post as Princess and arrived at the palace with an expression that mixed determination with barely concealed emotion. Known for her directness and impatience with royal ceremony, she carried herself with the purposeful stride of someone who had important truths to share, regardless of how uncomfortable those truths might be for others to hear. The siblings met in their mother's former private study, a room that had remained virtually unchanged since Queen Elizabeth II's death. Surrounded by familiar photographs, books, and personal mementos, Charles and sat across from each other in chairs their mother had used for decades to conduct the private business of monarchy. The weight of their shared grief and the complexity of their current crisis created an atmosphere charged with emotion. "Charles, you need to understand that Mother planned all of this very carefully," Princess and began without preamble, her characteristic directness cutting through any possibility of diplomatic conversation. The coronation gown, the replica, even the secrecy surrounding Camilla's involvement, none of it was random or impulsive. Princess and revealed that she had served as her mother's confidant during the final 18 months of the late Queen's life, when Elizabeth II had become increasingly concerned about how her personal legacy would be managed after her death. The elderly monarch had apparently worried that too many of her most meaningful possessions would disappear into official collections or museum displays, losing their emotional significance in favor of historical preservation. She called it her Human Heritage Project and explained, her voice softening with memory. Mother wanted to ensure that the personal relationships and emotional bond she had built over 7 decades of service would somehow survive her death and continue to influence the monarchy's future. The coronation gown's transfer to Queen Camilla had been just one element of a much larger and more sophisticated plan that Queen Elizabeth II had developed with characteristic thoroughness and attention to detail. Working in secret with her personal secretary and a small group of trusted advisors, she had identified key artifacts and possessions that she wanted to give to specific family members as personal gifts rather than official inheritances. Princess and produced a leather-bound journal that their mother had kept during her final months, documenting her reasoning for each planned gift and her hopes for how these transfers would strengthen family bonds and institutional continuity. The entries revealed a woman who understood that her death would mark the end of an era, but who was determined to create bridges between past and future that went beyond constitutional arrangements and official ceremonies. "Listen to this," and said, opening the journal to a page marked with a ribbon bookmark. July 15th, 2021. Camilla continues to surprise me with her understanding of duty and her genuine care for Charles. The criticism she faced in early years has transformed her into someone who truly appreciates the weight of service. The coronation gown should go to her because she will understand both its historical significance and its personal meaning to me. The journal entries painted a picture of Queen Elizabeth II's evolving relationship with her daughter-in-law that had developed far beyond what the public or even other family members had realized. Over years of private conversations and shared experiences, the two women had apparently formed a bond based on their mutual understanding of the sacrifices required by royal life and their shared commitment to supporting Charles in his role as heir and eventual king. Captain Morrison found himself drawn into these revelations as Princess and explained the security measures that had been necessary to implement Queen Elizabeth II's plan without detection. The creation of the replica coronation gown had required the involvement of master craftspeople who had worked under strict confidentiality agreements, while the physical transfer of the original had been accomplished through a series of carefully planned movements that had avoided official documentation. Mother was particularly concerned about how the press would interpret any public announcement of such gifts, and continued, reading from another journal entry. She felt that making the coronation gown transfer public would overshadow its personal meaning and turn it into a political statement about favoritism or succession planning. The late Queen's concerns had proven prescient, as the current crisis demonstrated exactly the kind of media and political complications that she had hoped to avoid. By keeping the gift secret, she had preserved its emotional significance while inadvertently creating the potential for exactly the kind of scandal she had sought to prevent. Dr. Thornfield was summoned to examine the journal and authenticate the handwriting, confirming that the entries were indeed in Queen Elizabeth II's distinctive script and appeared to have been written over an extended period during her final years. The documentation provided crucial context for understanding the coronation gown discovery, but it also revealed the existence of numerous other secret transfers that had not yet been discovered or investigated. King Charles struggled visibly with these revelations about his mother's secret activities during her final years. As her heir and closest advisor during that period, he felt both hurt that she had not confided in him about such significant decisions and guilty that he had failed to notice the elaborate planning that had apparently been occurring around him. "She was protecting you, Princess," and said gently, recognizing her brother's emotional turmoil. "Mother knew that official knowledge of these transfers would put you in an impossible position as heir. She wanted you to be able to claim genuine ignorance if questions arose, allowing you to handle any problems with clean hands." Queen Camilla's relief at learning about the journal entries was palpable as she finally understood the full context of Queen Elizabeth II's gift and her own role in a much larger plan. The isolation and guilt she had felt since the gown's discovery began to ease as she realized that her secretive behavior had been not just requested but required by the late Queen's careful orchestration. The journal also revealed Queen Elizabeth II's deep awareness of the challenges that Queen Camilla would face as consort and her desire to provide tangible symbols of support and acceptance. Beyond the coronation gown, the late Queen had planned several other personal gifts intended to reinforce Camilla's legitimacy and help her navigate the complex emotional terrain of royal duty. "She wrote this about you," and said to Camilla, turning to a later entry in the journal. September 3rd, 2021. "Camilla has learned to carry herself with true dignity despite years of unfair criticism. She understands that serving the crown means accepting personal sacrifice, and she has proven her commitment through her actions rather than her words. The gown will remind her that she has earned her place in our family's history." Morrison watched as Queen Camilla broke down in tears upon hearing these words, overwhelmed by the late Queen's posthumous validation of her decades-long struggle for acceptance. The emotional weight of discovering that Queen Elizabeth II had not only approved of her, but actively planned to support her future role created a moment of healing that seemed to reach backward through years of tension and forward into possibilities for family unity. The investigation that had begun with Morrison's security inspection had evolved into something far more complex than anyone had anticipated, revealing layers of family relationships, institutional planning, and personal emotions that challenged every assumption about how the royal family actually functioned behind their public facades. Princess Anne's revelations had transformed the coronation gown discovery from a potential scandal into a window into Queen Elizabeth II's remarkable final act of love and strategic thinking. As evening fell over Buckingham Palace, the royal family faced the challenge of deciding how to honor their mother's wishes while addressing the legitimate concerns raised by her unconventional methods. The existence of the journal provided legal and moral justification for the secret transfers, but it also raised questions about transparency and public accountability that would require careful navigation. Dr. Thornfield began the delicate process of inventorying other items that might have been transferred through Queen Elizabeth II's Human Heritage Project, while palace lawyers worked to determine what official notifications might be required to regularize the situation. The beautiful coronation gown that had started this entire crisis now seemed less like stolen property than like a carefully planned gift that had temporarily lost its way in the complex maze of royal protocol and family emotion. Morrison realized that his routine security inspection had uncovered not just a hidden gown, but a hidden story about love, planning, and hope that revealed the late Queen's final gift to her family. A reminder that behind all the ceremony and constitution, the monarchy ultimately depended on human relationships and the bonds of trust that connected one generation to the next. 9 weeks after Captain Morrison's discovery had shaken Buckingham Palace to its foundations, King Charles III stood before the coronation gown that had caused so much turmoil, finally, understanding his mother's wisdom in ways that had initially escaped him. The beautiful silk garment hung in a place of honor in Queen Camilla's private sitting room, no longer hidden, but displayed with the dignity and respect that befitted both its historical significance and its personal meaning. The intervening weeks had brought a resolution to the crisis that surprised everyone with its elegance and emotional depth. Working with constitutional lawyers, palace officials, and members of parliament, the royal family had crafted a solution that honored Queen Elizabeth II's intentions while addressing legitimate concerns about transparency and proper management of crown assets. The key breakthrough had come from an unexpected source: public opinion. When carefully selected details about Queen Elizabeth II's Human Heritage Project were leaked to sympathetic journalists, the British people's response had been overwhelmingly positive. Rather than viewing the secret transfers as inappropriate or scandalous, the public had embraced the story as evidence of the late Queen's humanity and her thoughtful preparation for the monarchy's future. Morrison had played a crucial role in developing the security protocols that would govern the new arrangement. Rather than returning the coronation gown to official storage, it would remain with Queen Camilla while being formally recognized as part of the royal collection on permanent loan. This compromise satisfied legal requirements while preserving the personal nature of Queen Elizabeth II's gift. Dr. Thornfield had overseen the creation of a detailed conservation plan that would ensure the gown's preservation while allowing Queen Camilla to occasionally wear it for special private occasions. The sight of the current queen consort wearing Queen Elizabeth II's coronation gown would create a visual bridge between past and future that perfectly embodied the late queen's original intentions. The investigation had also uncovered 11 other personal gifts that Queen Elizabeth II had secretly distributed to family members during her final years. Each transfer told a story of her deep understanding of individual personalities and needs, from a set of racing memorabilia given to Princess and to vintage military artifacts presented to Prince William. The breadth and thoughtfulness of these gifts revealed a woman who had spent her final months crafting a legacy of personal connection alongside her official duties. King Charles had initially struggled with learning about his mother's secret activities, feeling betrayed by her decision to exclude him from such significant planning. But Princess Anne's patient explanation of her mother's reasoning had eventually helped him understand that her secrecy had been an act of protection rather than exclusion. By keeping him uninformed, Queen Elizabeth II had ensured that her son could handle any resulting controversies with complete honesty about his lack of involvement. The emotional healing that followed these revelations had been as important as the legal and practical resolutions. Queen Camilla's relationship with other family members had been strengthened by the knowledge that Queen Elizabeth II had not only accepted her, but had actively planned to support her future role. The coronation gown had become a symbol of inclusion rather than division, proof that the late Queen had seen Camilla as a full member of the royal family worthy of trust and responsibility. Morrison found his own perspective on royal service fundamentally changed by his role in these events. The discovery that had begun as a potential security breach had evolved into a profound lesson about the human foundations underlying institutional monarchy. His routine inspection had revealed that behind all the protocols and procedures were real people making decisions based on love, hope, and their understanding of what would best serve both family and nation. The final resolution came during a private ceremony in the Blue Drawing Room, where King Charles officially presented Queen Camilla with a formal letter of gift that retroactively documented Queen Elizabeth II's intentions regarding the coronation gown. The document, crafted with input from constitutional experts, established legal precedent for how similar personal gifts from reigning monarchs should be handled in the future. Mother always understood that traditions must evolve to remain meaningful, King Charles said as he handed the letter to his wife. By giving you this gown, she was not just honoring your service, but ensuring that her own legacy would continue to inspire future generations of royal women. The ceremony was attended by immediate family members, senior palace officials, and the small group of staff members whose discretion and professionalism had been essential throughout the crisis. Morrison stood at attention near the door, proud of his role in uncovering a truth that had ultimately strengthened rather than weakened the institution he had devoted his life to serving. Dr. Thornfield had prepared a detailed exhibition plan that would allow the public to occasionally view Queen Elizabeth II coronation gown in its new context as a personal gift between royal women. These carefully planned displays would tell the story of the transfer while emphasizing the continuing bonds that connected past and future monarchs through shared symbols and traditions. The replica gown that had been created to replace the original in official storage had proven to be a masterpiece of craftsmanship in its own right. Rather than being discarded, it would be used for educational displays and exhibitions where the original would be too fragile or valuable to risk exposure. This solution ensured that both artifacts would continue to serve important purposes while preserving Queen Elizabeth II's complex legacy. Princess Anne had worked with palace archivists to establish new protocols for documenting personal gifts between royal family members, ensuring that future transfers would be properly recorded while still allowing for the private emotional exchanges that had been so important to Queen Elizabeth II. The balance between transparency and privacy would remain delicate, but clear guidelines would prevent future confusion. As autumn settled over Buckingham Palace, Morrison reflected on how a routine security inspection had transformed into a journey through the heart of royal family relationships and institutional evolution. The coronation gown that now hung proudly in Queen Camilla's chambers represented more than just a beautiful piece of clothing. It embodied the continuing thread of service, sacrifice, and love that connected generations of royal women across decades of change. The crisis had also strengthened Morrison's own relationship with the royal family, as his professional discretion and personal integrity during the investigation had earned him their trust and respect. King Charles had personally thanked him for handling the situation with sensitivity and wisdom, recognizing that Morrison's actions had helped preserve family unity while maintaining institutional integrity. Queen Camilla had asked Morrison to personally oversee the security arrangements for the coronation gown's display in her quarters, a responsibility he accepted with pride and humility. The gown would be protected not just as a valuable artifact, but as a symbol of the emotional bonds that sustained the monarchy through times of challenge and change. The story of Queen Elizabeth II's secret gift to her daughter-in-law had become part of palace legend, shared in whispered conversations among staff members who understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The late Queen's final act of family diplomacy had created a legacy that extended far beyond the beautiful gown itself, establishing new traditions of personal connection alongside constitutional duty. As Morrison completed his final report on the coronation gown investigation, he realized that his discovery had revealed fundamental truths about leadership, love, and legacy that would influence his own service for years to come. Queen Elizabeth II's wisdom in understanding that institutions must be built on human relationships rather than mere procedures had been vindicated through the very crisis that had initially threatened to expose her unconventional methods. The coronation gown would continue to serve its symbolic purpose, but now it carried additional meaning as a reminder that the strongest traditions are those that connect human hearts across time and circumstance. In giving this precious artifact to Queen Camilla, Queen Elizabeth II had ensured that her own coronation day would live on not just in history books, but in the lived experience of the woman who would help shape the monarchy's future. Morrison's routine inspection had become a catalyst for understanding that the true strength of the British monarchy lay not in its ceremonies or constitutional arrangements, but in its capacity to evolve through love, trust, and the wisdom of those who understood that serving the crown meant serving something larger than themselves. The beautiful coronation gown would remain a testament to that wisdom for generations to come.